What's up, everyone? Today we are wrapping up our week on spine mobility, and what we're going to be talking about today is that every day is spine day. Now, if you don't know what we mean by that, is normal programs have a leg day and an upper body day and a chest day, and we're going to talk about that every day is spine day. Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. I'm one of the co-founders of Unity Gym and the UMS, Unified Movement System, where we make driven people strong, flexible, and athletic with a better way to train. If you want to know how we do that, grab one of our free downloads. You can get the strength blueprint, the flexibility blueprint, or the nutrition blueprint. There's a link in the description of this video or podcast, wherever you're digesting this great info. And as always, I am joined by Phil White, our resident physiotherapist, and he's going to be helping to keep, basically to sanity check anything that I say here and make sure that I'm giving facts, not fiction. How are you, Phil?
Good, love it. I mean, it's no longer Physio Fridays, so for all those Physio Friday fans who are tuning in for your weekly fix, remember it is now Physio Mondays.
Doesn't rhyme as well, but it is actually better information.
Yeah, starting your week off right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all about. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this topic. It's felt like almost Physio week for me, because it's been a really good opportunity to talk about some kind of fundamental rehab, but also just training principles that I just wish that all my patients knew before coming to see me, because then we can do the really interesting stuff when you're actually in, instead of going through these concepts.
And isn't it just such an important thing to get your head around? We've spoken about not wrapping your spine in cotton wool. We've talked about not identifying too firmly with your X-ray or your MRI report.
Just appropriate use of X-rays.
Yeah. And also that yesterday we spoke about how challenging exercises are often the best. And today we're going to really talk about how we believe that every day is spine day, and we're going to start talking about that by talking about the way that the UMS program incorporates spine training in everything we do by doing free weights and calisthenics movements. So anything that you like, if you do anything on the gymnastics rings, anything, you're really working your spine, because all your core, everything has to be really firm to hold you there, and it's But the same thing's going on when you're, not just when you're deadlifting, but when you're squatting or when you're, bench pressing or doing a bent over row or something like that.
Yeah, people sort of get the impression that, the spine only, like the targeted spine work really only comes into, your real posterior chain exercises like your deadlift. And if you tick off the deadlift as giving you strong rectus spinae, that, the muscles that go either side of your spine to help you keep upright, then, that sort of tick that box for your back, and you'll be healthy. And I think it's definitely a great place to start. But what we really want to highlight here is just that with life being so variable, like you need to give your body a progressive overload to variable exposure to best make yourself resilient and capable for whatever you want to take on. Yeah,
and I mean, probably at the grassroots level, which we've spoken about, we spoke about this earlier, mostly yesterday we spoke about it. Deadlifting really is something that we try to educate people on as being something that you really should include if you have a compromised back. If you feel like you're somebody that gets back spasms regularly, or has been told in the past that you need to wrap yourself in cotton wool. But what we want to talk about today is that it goes way beyond that. You don't. We finished the show with Phil saying, deadlifting is a great place to start, but it is not where you stop. You continue to look for other ways to challenge the spine, and we'll talk about several options here. But we're going to talk about that every free weights workout is really beneficial for your spine health, and we're going to talk about how the UMS really capitalizes on that. There's a lot that's gone into, like, people come in. And they do the classes here, and they do a week or two, and I ask them how they're enjoying it. And they say, I really love it. I really enjoy, the balance of strength and flexibility and the bit of fitness that's involved. And when I go deeper into explaining why we do the program the way we do, people are often quite amazed, because we've really put a lot of thought into it. Not only have we put a lot of thought into it, we've had people like you who have critiqued the program positively and constructively and given us feedback on how we could make it even better. And we always make these changes. Yanni and Richard and I are definitely not don't have too big an ego to hear somebody else's opinion and then take that on board. And that's one of the strengths of this
it's
program.
interesting hearing you talk about one of the members who's been here from the very beginning the other day, and you know, he's seen sort of every version of you know, how the classes come together, and it was kind of nice to hear that he's sort of just, you know, so positive about where it's at now, and you know, that's come from a place of I really respect the way that you guys, you know, take on new information and really think deeply about this stuff. It's, you know, not just what's, you know, business wise most efficient. It's like how you can give the, you know, members of the gym and the members in the online community just like a really effective way of getting, like, ticking all the boxes, and then you know.
Yeah. So do you want to start off with this first point, Phil, where we were talking about just before the show, we wanted to talk about how the UMS itself, how it is really built in a way that that is good for spine health. Yeah.
So when just talking about the deadlifts and looking at that kind of posterior chain, so i.e. the muscles that go down your back, so your erector spina, your glutes, your hamstrings, like, people sort of think of that as a kind of classic way of building up a really strong, robust spine. And I agree with that, because, you know, most of the load that you're going to be, your spinal muscles and your structures will have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is basically just staying upright. And so by training that sagittal plane, so forward and back, basically in front of you is the sagittal plane, exercise is a really great way of building up resiliency for basically just, you know, being strong and being upright. And so I think that's like such a perfect way to start. But then when you think about how variable life is, with all the examples we've talked about this week about, you know, reaching for things or unexpected movements, or, you know, twisting or side bending to stop your kid running onto the road, like, you're going to have to be prepared for all this sort of stuff. So with the way that the UMS is built out, like, we expose the spine to lots of different, earlier on in the week I talked about, like, muscle contraction types and energy systems. So that's going to be, you know, isometric exercises versus concentric exercises. It's going to be like long duration versus sort of, you know, short sort of powerful movements, and then also loading kind of certain like movements that are, you're resisting other movements like the lateral flexion or the rotation as well. So it's kind of all part of it in the 5 days.
Yeah, and I mean, it even if you like, that's talking about the program split, but even if we talk about an individual workout, like, even just the fact that within the first 10 minutes of the workout, you're doing a warm up where as soon as we get the heart rate elevated, which even the exercise that we use, our exercise of choice, horizontal running, is really engaging the core muscles and teaching you to hold your body in a position dynamically whilst you're moving. And then you go straight from that into some spine mobility, where we teach people to really move their spine in every way possible. But then we finish that whole warm-up with a little bit of core activation on the anterior, posterior, and lateral sides of the core. So if you don't know what I'm talking about there, the anterior front, posterior back, and then lateral meaning the sides of your body. But you know, you're bringing the spine into flexion, extension, and lateral flexion, and engaging those muscles. So just in that first 10 minutes, even if you did nothing else in the day, that alone is more than what almost anyone's doing at the gym. You know, it's really amazing.
Absolutely, and I think that that's one of the other parts of you know, core strength that's kind of sometimes overlooked, where you know, as soon as, like, breathing is a big part of bracing for the sort of big barbell movements, but then, you know, when you think about regular life, like, it's unlikely that you're going to Valsalva maneuver to, you know, like, at a moment's notice to, you know, move your grocery cart or something like that. So it's really important to do things like, you know, the cardio circuit at the end, or the warm up at the beginning, where you get your, you know, your respiratory rate up by doing some cardio and kind of teaching your muscles to be able to engage while you're also breathing. Like, I'm pretty strict with people when they're doing the barbell movements to practice the breathing, because I think it's an important way to, like, really kind of kick goals with your strength training. But I think it's so key there, where we're learning how we can do, like, bracing strength, but we can also do sort of more dynamic strength with cardio side of things.
Yeah. So, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone that's watching live on the Facebook on the UMS Movement Mastermind group, but I can't see who you are because nobody's commented yet. So, can you guys put a quick comment? Hi. Just say hi so that we know who's watching and we can give you a shout out.
Yeah, and even better, ask some questions, especially if it's related to this stuff.
Any questions about spine health or anything to do with the UMS program or anything like that?
Your past experiences with it. Love to hear it.
But I remember. It's just so beneficial for all of us involved to have you around here, Phil. And for me, I love the conversations that we have sometimes when I'm training, and it really highlights sometimes what I'm doing really wrong. Sometimes I think, oh my God, I really need to reconsider that. But then sometimes what I'm doing right. And I remember the last time that this happened was when I was doing shuttle runs for my warm-up. And you made a comment of saying to me, oh man, I'd be really interested to see how you'd go doing a marathon or a run or whatever it was.
A marathon, just like 5K.
Yeah, just a 5K. Just a run, because, you're doing this little bit of exposure to the running, every couple of days. And I said, I wonder how I'd go. I mean, in my mind, I just think like it's got to be a lot better doing this little bit than none at all, right? And your response was, well, it's infinitely better. Yeah. Even if all you're doing is a minute of shuttle runs every day or every second day versus no running at all. So your body's never getting exposed to that impact. It's never getting exposed to that gait pattern. And that was my thought process. I thought, well, if I do a little bit, even if I'm not going for runs every day, at least I'm training that gait pattern, And the same thing can be applied to the spine. If all you did was that 1 minute of spine mobility, or if all you did was some free weights movements that engage the muscles that are going to strengthen the spine like we've just spoken about.
Yeah, or even the body weight movements that, you're talking about at the end of the warm-up there, perfect.
Yep. Versus the person that goes to the typical gym with machines and their warm-up is basically just to do 1 or 2 warm-up sets or to move their arms above their head or something, and then they do their whole workout on these machines where they're never really using the spine in the way that, even comes close to replicating real life.
I love the machines because they're such a great way to make people understand sort of the concepts around some of the big lifts, and I've been using it a lot with, squat and deadlift coaching at the moment, where basically, people really kind of have had that experience where they go on a leg press machine and they can just push away it as hard as they can, and they'll lift some really big numbers and feel pretty chuffed with themselves. And then, you see them then get on underneath a barbell and freak out as soon as there's, any amount of weight on there because it just doesn't work.
Even a fraction of the weight that they lift on the leg press.
Exactly. And so it's a really useful tool to teach people that, you got to turn the rest of your body using, the muscles around your spine to turn into that machine so that when you push with the muscles that are meant to be producing this movement, that everything else is strong and stable. So it's a kind of a nice little analogy that people seem to click with.
For sure.
For that.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So
definitely with your point on a little bit every day being just infinitely better than nothing. Yeah, there's so many of hopefully you're just kind of seeing all the different, as we'll talk about today, just all the different ways in which you can bring in sort of loading of your spine and how you can fit that in, even if in Sydney we're kind of looking at potentially going back down into lockdown. So maybe you won't have a gym, so you won't be able to do the exact sort of program that we usually do, but we'll definitely have a way of understanding what we can be doing even in the home situation. And I had a patient the other day who was talking about how he started getting a bit of back pain in halfway through the lockdown, and he was saying, I was like, oh yeah, so what's your home work set up like? And he's like, oh, I do it from the bed. And in that sort of classic sort of you just slump further down throughout the day, and he was basically in a almost entirely supine, so on your back, flat kind of position with just putting all his weight through his lower back. And I'm like, yeah, of course you. And I'm like, are you doing any exercise? He's like, oh no, I've sort of dropped off. And it's like, yeah, if he was just getting up, moving, doing a little bit of that core activation stuff, then you'd fight the.
You know what really amazed me, and this is me who's been a personal trainer for decades, working in the fitness space, but when I've looked deeper into standing desks, and I spoke to somebody that knows a hell of a lot more about. Or at least back then knew a lot more than I did about it. And I said, standing desks are really great for people, aren't they? And the answer was, well, they're only good if they're used in conjunction with other things. Like a standing desk, if you only stand there and that's the only thing you do, it's only marginally better than sitting down because it still creates the same problem where you're stuck in the one position.
Your best posture is your next posture.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is a really good opportunity to talk about the example that you've just said. If you're working at home from now at the moment, you've got one of the best opportunities to do in my opinion, one of the best things for your spine, which is undulate, like move back and forth between laying face down on the ground, prone on your elbows. Because I love that one, because if you think about it, even when you're standing, most people don't have a monitor at head height. Most people are still doing that. So I'm on the podcast, I'm tilting my head forward and leaning down. So even though you're standing, most people are still looking down like this and creating that flexion in the neck. Whereas when you lay down on your stomach, on your elbows, you're forced to put your spine into extension like that. I love it because it's quite uncomfortable. You can't do it for very long, but it just gives you that exposure to a different
I think
position.
like the home situation is just so good because you don't have someone watching you. You can basically just do whatever you want. So you can spend a bit of time like that. You can go and work at your kitchen countertop. You can go then onto the couch for a bit. Then you can go onto your dining room table, for example. And that's just a way of adding in variability when no one of those things, if you did it all day, would be comfortable or perfect.
Yeah.
But the variability is great.
Yeah. So let's
we'll jump into
quick shout outs. Yeah. So we've got Dave Clark here saying hi. How are you, brother? Michael Bergreen is saying spine day every day. Love you guys. And then he said, I struggled with neck pain and poor posture, and I'm doing so much better now thanks to the UMS. Love the loaded mobility routine. That's awesome, brother.
Is that you putting on a fake name and commenting from afar?
Yeah.
No, great to hear, Michael. It's really nice to hear when you
it's really
results.
cool. And I've loved watching your progress, man. It's been really, really cool to see how far you've come with us. And Lee Clements is saying, missed yesterday, but glad spine is still being discussed. And then,
we really wanted to give the full week on this because there's just so much to talk about. And
and this is the theme that we're trying to do these days, everybody. We're trying to figure out what can we talk about for a week that we can really add value to people with, So Lee's then said, neck issues here after teaching for years, writing on a board, doing foundations now, referring to the foundations program of the UMS, and becoming confident again with moving the upper spine, especially twisting moves. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah, nice.
How good is that? Lee,
legend.
We've been saying this for so long, and I need to put this to sleep because I feel like we keep getting it wrong. Lee, you are a lady, right?
That's right.
I'm almost certain.
Cheers.
And the reason why we get so confused is that we've got two Lees,
man, we've got so many Lees
at our gym, and they're both men.
They're both
so
men.
I know it's a unisex name. And Lee, you're somebody that's in your 60s, I think, if I'm correct. So to be in your 60s and to be doing exercise that is age reversing, that's bringing you back into feeling like you can live a pain-free existence. I mean,
what happened with my mum? She started training here, and now she's bushwalking and ocean swimming, and she's in a boogie boarding club. It's great.
It's
good,
really
isn't
it?
Good to see people taking action.
Such a good thing. So,
and another Lee Sounds from the UK.
Lee Sounds, another Lee. We're surrounded by Lees. Lee's saying good evening from the UK. It's too hot to sleep. Oh wow, what a shame. What's the temperature over there, Lee? Let us know.
Yeah. So we'll get into basically our idea today was to kind of talk through a week of what training would look like that we do with the UMS system and basically talk about how we're sort of in those movements, loading the spine in different positions, different contraction types, different muscle, energy systems.
Yep. So what we start the week with in the UMS is what we call we always talk about the workout as being the resistance training movements that we do, but then the resistance training is always paired with mobility and flexibility. So on Monday, we start with bent arm strength, vertical push-pull. Bent arm strength refers to upper body strength movements where the elbows bend. We also have straight arm scapular strength, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that's when the elbows don't bend. So a bent arm strength vertical push-pull pattern at the grassroots level in the foundations program, we start with dumbbell shoulder press and feet-assisted pull-ups. So what are your thoughts, Phil?
Yeah, well, the shoulder press is just one of the most common things that I'm giving cues related to how people are positioning their backs. Because I've seen it quite a bit with some of the new members this week and some of the old members who are kind of going for trying to really push into PBs. Is the most common thing you see when people start with the shoulder press is they try and basically turn it into like a standing bench press by doing a lean back and getting lots of extension through both their lumbar and their thoracic, to then basically try and make it a horizontal push in a extended spine position rather than a vertical push. So a cue I love to give is basically trying to think about like doing a slight posterior pelvic tilt to try and hold that sort of more neutral spine, getting your abs nice and engaged, and then keeping your chest tall and your shoulders back and down. A cue that I give, like just like the active hang position that you get to. I basically for all, you'll hear me say it a lot because it's all the kind of strength movements. You're basically kind of wanting to hold that position to keep your upper body strong and in a nice, strong sort of neutral position. And then from there, you've got a really strong foundation, a really immovable sort of block. One thing that kind of people struggle with sometimes is a bit of balance. So either going into a slight tandem stance or sort of feet next to each other is fine, whatever's comfortable for people. But then, that puts your spine in a position where you've got this great, strong axial skeleton, so pelvis, spine, and rib cage. And then when you start to produce force with your hands, you don't get that, moving around. I see a lot of members
which is critical because when you're training, we always like to say we don't train for the gym, we train for life. And when you're training for life, like the time will come when you have to lift a load above your head.
My dad is 70 this year and he's big into his surfing, and I was like it's kind of got to the point where we were surfing down the coast on the weekend, and he's got a really heavy board which he puts a hydrofoil on. Like, he's pretty badass for a 70-year-old, but like you can see it starting to get really awkward for him just to put the board on top of the car, and like that's going to be one of the limiting factors for him to do a hobby that he loves, is just even lifting this bloody heavy board onto the car. So I was even working with him just like, when you do it, try and think about this and this, and this is a really good time to use sort of your breath for bracing and putting it above. So
and overhead pressing, if you don't go to the gym, it's one of the positions that people actually go into the least. If you really think about it, if you're not intentionally training overhead vertical push pull, then what you're likely, the only time you ever even lift your arms close to overhead is when you go for something in the top shelf in the kitchen. And that's a really, really different thing to pushing force away from you or pulling force towards you in an overhead position. So it's this use it or lose it thing. And what Phil just described is really important, because if you don't develop that strength, if you don't develop that conditioning, that exposure to, a braced position to do that, like when you do it enough in the gym, you'll go out and you'll go to lift something off the ground. And it's amazing, when I see people that go to the gym, when they go to lift things, and it looks like they're doing a gym workout. Like, they'll bend down with a nice good posture, or they'll get down into a squat, pick it up, clean it up onto their shoulders, and then push it up, and you don't even think about it,
Yeah, but then I think it's like one kind of really key thing to point out there is like context really matters. And if you're picking up a pen and you become someone who's so wrapped up about having a bad back and you never explore like a relaxed, unweighted forward bend like you do in even the beginnings of a Jefferson curl, but also just the spine mobility where you're just like free to move without an external load. Like, if you start to become someone who's an overextender, who the only way you'll pick up a pen is by bracing everything, then that's no longer a great outcome, and you're then more likely to injure yourself if you do anything outside of that. So, I think we've not got heaps of time, and we could get a bit lost going through all the different strength movements and how your spine is activated. But I think it's just so key to understand the context and the importance of then, when we move past our strength movements and into, your minimum basic workout, your minimum viable workout of doing the spine mobility, but also, in the cardio workouts and how, even with a burpee, a lot of people sort of struggle by the end of a burpee to kind of maintain
keep
like
a
good form there. You start to, like, the breath really starts to affect your ability to, hold that sort of push-up position. So, I think it's just really key to understand that, like, when you're doing each of these exercises, just trying to be aware of the context and what you're training for.
Yeah, and I think it's a good opportunity to point out load management here as well, because load management, what we always try to get people to understand is that it's not about what weight can you lift, like, with no parameters put around you, like it's like just squat down and then get back up as long as your legs bend and then you get back up. It's about what weight can you lift for the prescribed amount of reps with good technique. So when we give the cues for the squat of keeping the gaze high and the chest up and the elbows up so that we really get a good platform for the barbell to sit, I'm talking about a barbell back squat here. It's that you can maintain that technique for the reps and for the sets. And for a lot of people, it means that they actually have to lift a little bit less weight than they thought they could. But what that's going to do over time is far more beneficial for the body than if you're lifting a heavier weight with really bad technique.
So at the end of the day, like, it's quality of life, hey? Like, you want to have a body that, and it's one of the things that people often say when they start getting into this training where you start stretching for the first time and you start doing some of this stuff, is like your body just feels better. Like, you just get on with your life better. And I think that's really, like, that's what excites me. Like, it's, I think performance and kicking off performance goals is cool, but like the way that my training has gone now is like I want to be able to go surfing, any day that I want. I want to be able to like play beach volleyball, but then I also want to like randomly go for a 120 kilometer bike ride. And if I only trained by doing like very specific movements in the gym, then and I didn't have that variability, then if I tried to do one of those activities that is wildly outside of sort of what I prepared for, then the body wouldn't be able to do it. So same with you. You start just like occasionally we'll just do like a fly kick. It's like, okay, cool. And so if you haven't kind of exposed your body to variability in your training, then if you try and perform or even just in life add that variability in, you're gonna have a hard time. Yeah,
so important. And I think for me, this is the last thing that I want to talk about in this topic, which is to build on what you've just said. So, we've spent the majority of the show talking about the way that the UMS program in itself, by using free weights and calisthenics or body weight type movements, the way that we train the spine in all these different positions and variables. So if we put all of that into one bucket, which would be that the strength training movements that you do are chosen in a way to train the muscles that are going to support a healthy spine, and by using different variability. The second bucket that I would say, this is just my interpretation of the UMS, by the way, would be to do spine mobility unloaded or sometimes loaded, like with the Jefferson curl, but where the intention is to take every joint in the spine through as much movement as it's got. And each joint in the spine actually doesn't have that much movement at all. There's a lot more movement in the joints in the cervical spine, which is your neck, than there is in the lumbar spine, because the lumbar has to take the whole load. But each joint itself doesn't move that much, but when you look at the way that they move synergistically together, that's what creates this beautiful spine movement. And that's the other part of the puzzle for me, is the way that we that you want to be doing what we just said with your training, but you also want to be intentionally, thinking about how can I move my neck as far as it can go in every direction? How can I get my thoracic spine doing the same thing? How can I create some flowing movement through my whole spine from top to bottom?
Yeah, and I think it's important for those people who, like even just the thought of doing like some twisting movements or bending movements freak out and like, oh, I don't even want to do that. But you can see this is a great way to start. Like, you don't have to push to the very end range when you start, but then as you start to get more comfortable and you think like, hey, this is actually feeling fine, I'm starting to relax into it, then you can start exploring range from there. But it's just such a key thing that people don't really do. And if you're especially in lockdown times, like if you're stuck at home all day just in that sort of one position, then you're going to feel a whole lot worse for it. And if you can just add in this one, even your minimum viable workout of just getting moving a little bit, like your body feel
my God, it just feels so much better, And listen, we do have to get into the UMS online coaching group now. We have our weekly coaching call that is exclusive for our UMS online coaching members.
We got like videos up. Well, we haven't quite got them on the screen, but we've been working through videos with people watching and really pointing out these specifics that we would have liked to have gone into each of the movements today and how the spine works. But it's a great opportunity to get on and look at all the videos of the members doing it and pointing out those cues that you might just miss if you're training on your own.
I can't wait. We basically go to a higher level than what we do in this show, so we've got to get ready for that. So I just want to let you
out on all day. I could do that all day.
So just want to let you guys know, for those of you that have been listening this week that want to know where do you go from here if you want to take your spine training to the next level, if you really want to understand, you've got two great options. Today we're putting the Spine Mobility Masterclass on sale for the flash sale. So it's normally $149 US. It's going to be $49 US for the next 3.5 days, basically until 11:59 Pacific time, LA time on Monday. And that is a phenomenal program. There's 5 phases to it. It's going to give you a step-by-step path to go from that isolation to integration to improvisation phase. And the second option that you have is that you can subscribe to the UMS online coaching program, which includes everything, including the Spine Mobility Masterclass. It includes all of our programs, and that you'll get access to the full Foundations program that we've been talking about and the Progressions program, so you'll have everything that you need to know, and you'll also get the Spine Mobility Masterclass. So keep an eye out for that, guys. It's going to be a really good opportunity to get another one of our absolutely amazing programs. And we will see you on Monday for Physio Monday.
Like, for you guys who love learning about this sort of stuff, ask questions, because if you ask questions, that will really guide, the stuff we talk about. And so if you're having problems with anything in particular, let us know, and then we can,
It always does. That's how we come up with the topics. We look at what the questions that are coming up are and think this is what we can add value to. So,
and it's so nice when you feel like you're actually helping like when you have particular stories of who you helped, and hearing you, Michael Bergeron, tune in and hearing you getting results just makes us really excited to do this
it's unreal.
stuff.
So good. So for those of you listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube, if you've made it this far, please jump over to Facebook and join this group where we record these shows live and interact with you. Just search Facebook for UMS Movement Mastermind and join, and make sure you answer the questions and agree to the group's terms and conditions so you get accepted into the group. And then also grab one of our free downloads, the Flexibility Blueprint, the Strength Blueprint, or the Nutrition Blueprint, where we give away 10 key lessons to really help you with your training. It's very valuable stuff. We put a lot of work into those to make sure that it was actionable information. And thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.